In September 2023, the 460th Air Defense Artillery Regiment at Fort Sill became the first unit in the United States to be equipped with portable directed energy weapons, honest to goodness lasers. This cutting-edge technology is designed to theoretically shoot down various threats, including incoming artillery shells and hostile drones. This initiative is part of a broader effort by the US military to modernize its capabilities. However, it's important to note that lasers can be easily countered by factors such as smoke or even a simple reflective surface. As you delve deeper into the world of lasers, you'll discover that they are simultaneously one of the most advanced and one of the most vulnerable weapons currently available in military arsenals. The reality is that weaponized lasers were abandoned in the 1980s for good reason. It is only now, due to the rise of new threats and widening gaps in existing air defenses, that this technology is being revisited. But have advancements in technology truly made lasers suitable for military purposes, or are we witnessing desperate times that are forcing the adoption of less than perfect military hardware? The Rapid Dragon deployment system, developed by Lockheed Martin and set to enter production in 2022, can efficiently and cost-effectively airdrop up to 45 extended-range cruise missiles, each capable of striking a target at up to 1,900 kilometers away. Few, if any, air defense systems could effectively counter that many small, fast-moving targets. Should such an attack occur, high-value facilities would likely be left largely defenseless. Moreover, it may not even take something as formidable as cruise missiles to exploit weaknesses in air defenses. Drones, which are significantly cheaper and readily available, could pose a serious threat, especially if deployed in sufficient numbers. So what's needed is a defensive weapon capable of tracking small, fast-moving targets and accurately firing on them, preferably without breaking the bank. Weapon exists, it's a laser. Now, the good news is that significant research and development has already been invested in this technology. A similar scenario occurred in the 1980s when lasers were also viewed as the perfect solution. The bad news is that efforts to develop lasers for air defense at that time were predominantly unsuccessful, leading to the technology being considered largely unfit for military use. The Strategic Defense Initiative, often referred to as Star Wars, was launched in 1984 under President Ronald Reagan. It aimed to provide a groundbreaking laser-based solution to the challenge of ballistic missile defense. The aftermath of World War II had transitioned directly into the Cold War, a period marked by the unsettling emergence of intercontinental ballistic missiles. Both the Soviet Union and the United States grappled with how to defend against this new threat, leading to countless projects seeking a strategic advantage. Among these, President Reagan, armed with a long list of potential solutions, focused on the Strategic Defense Initiative, convinced that lasers could ultimately tip the balance in favor of the United States. In summary, the Star Wars program combined ground-based and satellite-mounted lasers that, when used alongside cutting-edge radar, aimed to render ballistic nuclear missiles obsolete. The network of lasers would be capable of targeting missiles mid-flight, hitting them with pulses of directed energy to disable them before they reached their intended targets. As a result, the doctrine of mutually assured destruction would effectively become obsolete, and Reagan believed humanity would enter a new era of peace. However, the fact that only the US would possess this technology was highly controversial, leading to a deafening political storm. Since the Strategic Defense Initiative ultimately failed and the Cold War came to an end, we can only speculate about the political chaos that may have been avoided. Now, perhaps the most intriguing aspect of the project was the overall ambition behind it. By that time, the limitations of laser technology were well understood. For the concept to succeed, engineers would not only have needed to mount lasers on satellites, but they would also have had to rapidly advance the technology to a stage suitable for military applications. The reality was that the US was desperate for a solution to the emerging threat of nuclear war, and as the saying goes, necessity is the mother of invention. The Strategic Defense Initiative was dissolved in 1993 and restructured into the Space Development Agency, which continues to work with satellites today, but has abandoned all efforts to weaponize lasers. It's disappointing, we know. Ultimately, the failed project likely cost billions and achieved nothing, marking it as one of the costliest military failures of the 1980s and early 1990s. However, it was only one of many unsuccessful attempts to militarize lasers. The 80s were characterized by relentless efforts to transform light into a weapon, not necessarily because lasers were the perfect solution for intercepting incoming nuclear threats, but because they represented the best available option under the circumstances. You see, lasers represented a quintessential catch-22 technology, offering numerous theoretical advantages that could transform a military overnight, yet equally burdened by a host of disadvantages that prevent the technology from being a definitive success. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. We should start at the beginning, so we can gain a clearer understanding of how lasers emerged and then the progress to the battleship-mounted Helios that made headlines earlier this year. The laser, or light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation, mouthful, was invented in 1960. This innovation emerged just 5 years after a fictional particle beam weapon captured public attention through the works of science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke, who was inspired by Albert Einstein's theories. The advent of lasers captivated the world, motivating science fiction writers to embrace directed energy weapons as the firearm of choice and leading to visions of the future that prominently featured ray guns instead of traditional projectile weapons. However, instead of the invention of the laser ushering the world into a new era, the 1960s and 70s ended up demonstrating that the technology was significantly less useful than it initially appeared, particularly regarding military applications. Now, we'll delve into this a bit more later, but the reality is that a laser requires an enormous amount of energy to function effectively as a weapon. Additionally, the intensity of a laser beam diminishes exponentially with distance, and a laser can be thwarted by anything from reflective surfaces to adverse weather conditions. Interestingly, these limitations are also the reason why Star Trek transitioned to non-specific phaser technology, while the Star Wars movies opted for the oddly slow-moving laser-adjacent blasters. Now, with all that being said, and considering how science fiction can distort our perceptions, it's easy to forget that a laser is simply amplified and concentrated light. In brief, a laser requires an optical material such as a crystal, which is housed inside a cavity with reflective surfaces on either side, one fully reflective and the other partially reflective. The optical material converts electrons or electricity into photons, light particles, which are then reflected back and forth between the surfaces. As the photons bounce, colliding repeatedly with the optical material, their numbers increase exponentially. Once a sufficient number of protons have accumulated, they pass through the semi-reflective surface, creating a concentrated beam of light, and that's your laser. Lasers that utilize a solid optical material like a crystal, they're referred to as solid-state lasers. However, other mediums such as gases can also be used. Regardless of the optical material, the primary function remains the same, converting electrons into photons. It's important to remember that light, whether visible or not, represents only a portion of the broader electromagnetic spectrum, which extends from radio waves all the way through to gamma rays. While it is indeed possible to create lasers using other parts of the spectrum, like X-rays, the majority of lasers we encountered are concentrated in the central part of the spectrum, specifically between ultraviolet and infrared. In military terminology, directed energy weapons, or DEWs, encompass the manipulation of all parts of this spectrum, with devices such as microwave emitters also being considered viable options. The most familiar type of laser pointers, operates within the visible wavelength spectrum, is low-powered, and its beam simply reflects off of any surface that it meets. In contrast, higher-powered lasers, typically found in the infrared spectrum and invisible to the naked eye, possess the capability to vaporize biological matter and cut through steel. Little bit of a different game. In short, the cutting potential of lasers is revolutionary, providing both unmatched speed and precision that far surpasses traditional industrial cutting methods. Even quarter-inch steel plating stands no chance against lasers operating in the 6 kilowatt range and above, which is precisely the kind of power that excites military applications. So, what makes infrared lasers particularly appealing to militaries is that they are not only invisible, they're also completely silent. The potential for stealth operations is undeniable, especially given that a laser can theoretically strike a target at a distance of up to 8 kilometers or more. More on that later. Light is unaffected by gravity, it's immune to wind, and even considerations like Earth's curvature and rotation don't hinder its path. In contrast, projectile weapons designed for long-range shooting require complex calculations in order to ensure a hit. As a general rule, the greater the distance to the target, the more intricate these equations become. This complexity is why mathematics plays such a crucial role in sniper training, and it's also why snipers typically engage targets at around 1 kilometer or less. With a laser, becoming a successful sniper would simply involve having a clear line of sight, aligning the crosshair on your target, and pulling the trigger. While we're not asserting that such a directed energy weapon is currently feasible, it's this kind of potential that makes the military so excited. Beyond this, all types of directed energy weapons are significantly cheaper and more convenient since they don't require traditional ammunition. Securing supply lines and ensuring troops receive ammo is a fundamental aspect of every military operation. By reducing costs and simplifying logistical challenges, these advancements certainly catch the attention of military leaders. A laser weapon, in theory, only requires a power source to keep its battery charged. Although this presents its own set of challenges, it is far preferable to the endless logistics needed for traditional ammunition. Given these advantages, it's not surprising that shortly after the unveiling of laser technology, every major nation in the world began efforts to harness its power. The list of projects is extensive, and the number of involved organizations, well, that's even longer. You've got Boeing, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Rheinmetall, and countless others. Billions of dollars have been invested in research. However, almost every investment has resulted in a failed prototype, or in many cases, just no prototype at all. Project Excalibur was an X-ray laser-based directed energy weapon developed alongside the Strategic Defense Initiative in the mid-80s. Both projects aimed to mount laser weapons on satellites. However, Excalibur's concept involved detonating the unit in orbit. This would scatter X-ray lasers that could disable in-flight missiles. Each Excalibur unit was designed to remain in orbit indefinitely, powering up only upon detecting a missile and detonating if the threat warranted an explosive response. The project was particularly appealing because the lasers were estimated to travel thousands of miles, effectively disabling missiles over a vast area. However, a significant drawback was that each Excalibur unit was a one-time solution. Once detonated, the units would need to be replaced as soon as possible to avoid creating a vulnerable dead zone through which subsequent missiles could easily pass. The history of Project Excalibur, it's complex enough to deserve its own video, to be honest. However, the key takeaway is that the program was cancelled around the same time as the Strategic Defense Initiative. Similar to its counterpart, the challenges associated with laser technology were considered insurmountable, a recurring theme that will soon become rather apparent. Another significant failure was Boeing's YAL-1, a chemical laser mounted on a modified Boeing 747. The goal was, once again, to intercept intercontinental ballistic missiles. The design achieved enough success to warrant continued development into the mid-2000s, with several test missiles successfully shot down. However, the project was ultimately cancelled in 2011, 16 years after the concept was first proposed. What makes the Boeing YAL-1 particularly noteworthy is that Secretary of Defense Gates publicly addressed not only the issues with the project, but also the broader challenges associated with laser technology as a whole. Gates stated, "I don't know anyone in the Department of Defense who believes that this program should or ever could be operationally deployed. The reality is that you would need a laser that is 20 to 30 times more powerful than the chemical laser currently aboard the plane to reach any significant distance from the launch site. Right now, the airborne laser, or ABL, would have to orbit within the boundaries of Iran to successfully use its laser to intercept a missile. If you were to move forward with this operationally, you would need 10 to 20 747s, each costing $1.5 billion, along with an annual operating cost of around $100 million. The problems Gates refer to revolve around power and effective range, which essentially encapsulate every attempt to militarize lasers in the 1980s. Most projects were ultimately cancelled, having failed to progress beyond the prototype stage or were downscaled to niche applications like the Dazzler. The consensus among the organizations involved was that high-performance laser weapons are virtually impossible to develop in a manner that allows them to compete with more effective projectile-based alternatives. Now, before diving into the specific challenges faced by laser weapons, let's take a moment to acknowledge two of the most intriguing laser weapon projects of the 1980s that managed to yield viable results: the aforementioned Dazzler and the Soviet laser pistol. Both were proposed following the initial wave of military research and development, and notably, the Dazzler has been adopted by some modern militaries. The Soviet handheld laser, though conceptualized but never produced, was designed for space station occupants to engage in close-quarters combat. At the height of the Cold War in 1984, there were concerns that the US might attempt to board Soviet space stations in a bid to hijack them. Recognizing the challenges presented by projectile weapons in zero gravity, a laser pistol was proposed as a means for Soviet cosmonauts to defend themselves. The laser pistol had the potential to blind adversaries from as far as 20 meters away, making it, by today's standards, no more deadly than a common laser pointer. What is particularly intriguing, however, is that the Soviets developed a flash cartridge featuring pyrotechnic bulbs and aluminium garnet crystals, which were 3 times more luminescent than a standard strobe light. The Dazzler was a non-lethal, blinding weapon originally proposed as a spotlight modified with additional rotating mirrors to disorientate enemy aircraft during World War II. The concept evolved in the 1980s into a handheld laser-based alternative, reportedly first used by the British in 1982. There are indications that this technology was deployed during the Falklands War, targeting both troops and helicopter pilots, though this remains uncertain. What is clear is that the Dazzler became a source of controversy due to instances where it caused permanent blindness, drawing the attention of the UN. A brief debate led to the establishment of the 1995 United Nations Protocol on Blinding Laser Weapons, which is still in effect today, primarily addressing the use of Dazzlers to blind uncooperative drivers at military checkpoints. In light of this, the 1980s seemed to herald an end to the weaponization of lasers. However, if that was the case, what is Helios? And why is it being hyped as a groundbreaking new weapon? Helios, which stands for High Energy Laser with Integrated Optical Dazzler and Surveillance, deep breath, is currently mounted on an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer as part of the anti-air Aegis combat system. Helios features a fiber optic and modular power configuration, operating within a power range of 60 to 120 kilowatts, with plans for an upgrade to the 150 to 300 kilowatt range in the future. To put this in perspective, an industrial cutting laser is considered ultra-high power at around 6 kilowatts, and the most powerful models typically don't exceed 15. Helios, as a military weapon, is designed to defend against drones, fast attack craft, and incoming missiles. It boasts incredible precision with virtually zero lag between firing and striking a target. The weapon theoretically has the capacity to fire an unlimited number of times and is reportedly accurate at distances of up to 8 kilometers. We also mentioned that lasers are not affected by gravity or wind, and that light usually travels in a straight line unless interrupted. Thus, Helios exemplifies the concept of point and shoot. According to military spokespersons, the official adoption of Helios marks just the beginning of a broader modernization campaign currently underway in the US military. As part of this modernization effort, 50-kilowatt lasers were mounted to Stryker infantry fighting vehicles in February of last year. This configuration is known as the Directed Energy Maneuver Short-Range Air Defense, or DM-SHORAD. 4 prototypes have been sent out for field testing in an unspecified region of the Middle East, while the responsible technology company Raytheon released a fact sheet with additional info. The fact sheet states that the weapon is intended to, quote, quickly detect, track, identify, and defeat swarming asymmetric threats. The laser offers 360-degree protection day and night for high-value military and civilian assets with minimal risk of collateral damage, end quote. During the deployment of the lasers, Army Vice Chief of Staff General James Mingus gave an interview in which he expressed optimism but clarified that the weapons are still prototypes. He said, "It's a prototype, but we want to experiment in a live environment. Is it 100% ready? Is it going to work perfectly? Probably not, but we're going to learn from it." The quote ends. Now, much has already been learned about these weapons. In June 2023, Raytheon conducted live-fire testing of a similar version of the DM-SHORAD known as the H-4. During these tests, H-4 demonstrated its ability to cut through steel plating, aluminium, copper, carbon fiber, and Kevlar. In addition to those sent to the Middle East, Raytheon provided a total of 8 H-4 units to the US Department of Defense, with some assigned to the 4th Battalion, 60th Air Defense Artillery Regiment at Fort Sill. So let's now take a moment to gain some perspective here. While Helios is indeed mounted on a ship and capable of shooting down targets, it is important to note that the entire system can be compromised by factors like fog, rain, smoke, dust, or even a mirror. Furthermore, lasers are fundamentally constrained by their dependence on extraordinarily high amounts of power. Despite advancements in battery technology, they remain limited unless connected to a permanent energy grid. As a general rule, a laser powerful enough to kill a human cannot be carried by a person. This means that the concept of science fiction laser pistols is still unattainable and will continue to be so without a significant breakthrough. We're all disappointed that we don't yet have phasers. But this doesn't even consider the issue of thermal blooming, a phenomenon that significantly reduces the effective range of laser weapons, often limiting it to just 1 or 2 kilometers. Thermal blooming was a key factor in halting research on initiatives like the Strategic Defense Initiative, Project Excalibur, and the Boeing YAL-1. It may surprise you to learn that no effective solution has been found, and this problem is as relevant today as it was in the 1980s. To sum up, militaries largely abandoned directed energy weapons for a reason, and nearly all of the associated challenges remain unresolved today. The short-range US Navy laser weapon system, or LAWS, deployed in 2014, still operational today. It has been casually described as 4 cutting lasers strapped together, which makes a standard industrial cutting laser a bit of a fair comparison. Cutting lasers, similar to military lasers, operate by heating the material they cut until it either melts or vaporizes. A crucial aspect of achieving this is the precise control of the beam, focus, and distance. Even a slight deviation of just a few millimeters or improper beam focus can exponentially reduce its cutting optimization. Additionally, relevant to military applications, the most powerful cutting lasers designed for slicing through thick steel or aluminium plates consume enormous amounts of power and necessitate complex water cooling systems. Modern lasers are estimated to achieve a maximum efficiency of around 50%. This means that the remaining 50% of energy is released as uncontrolled, intense heat. Without a constant flow of water to maintain a cool system, there's a significant risk the lasers will overheat and damage themselves. Beyond these initial limiting factors, lasers also face significant challenges due to atmospheric interference and that thermal blooming that we mentioned earlier. Thermal blooming is a phenomenon in which lasers, operating at an energy density of approximately 1 megajoule per cubic centimeter, start to break down plasma in the atmosphere. This breakdown causes the laser beam to defocus and disperse into the surrounding air, resulting in a reduction of intensity proportional to the distance traveled. Atmospheric interference, such as smoke or fog, exacerbates this issue. In fact, thick smoke is all that's really required to completely neutralize even an ultra-high-powered laser like the Helios. Now, there are potential methods for mitigating thermal blooming, such as bulky focusing lenses or advanced theoretical technologies, but none of these solutions are currently regarded as viable. While lasers would be the simplest solution, and their effectiveness is already evident in cutting lasers, the lenses needed for something the size of Helios would be enormous. They would be delicate and simply ill-suited for conditions on a ship of war. To illustrate this point, if telescopes are notorious for going out of alignment even under perfect conditions, susceptible to the slightest turbulence, consider the difficulty of maintaining a laser's focus in rough seas. These challenges would be further compounded by the necessity of constantly adjusting the lenses based on the distance to the target. This adjustment system would require complex machinery, which in turn would demand regular maintenance. Alternative solutions to conventional lasers suggest that a laser could be powerful enough to pulse just once, within fractions of a second, to destroy a target before thermal blooming has even had the opportunity to disperse the energy. Another idea is to use several low-powered lasers that can simultaneously focus on a single target, effectively combining their output for maximum impact. While both of these approaches are technically feasible, they require an increase in power demand that goes beyond the already excessive baseline. Currently, the workaround being pursued involves simply boosting power as much as possible. This approach does not eliminate thermal blooming, but instead compensates for the anticipated energy loss. While this method allows for greater distance, it doesn't really address the problem. It's more of a brute force solution. And on that note, we previously mentioned that Helios is being upgraded from 60 kilowatts to 300, and now you probably understand the reasoning behind this. When discussing Helios, it's important to put the claim that the laser can hit targets at 8 kilometers into a bit of context. The statement should include a crucial caveat. Helios may theoretically reach targets at that distance only under perfect atmospheric conditions and when configured for maximum power draw. On this point, the significance of 300 kilowatts should not be underestimated. It's equivalent to the total energy capacity of about 30 to 40 modern households. However, in this case, that energy is released in just a few seconds. If that fact doesn't make you consider the immense amount of excess heat being generated, it certainly should. And that raises the next major challenge and highlights another misleading claim, that laser weapons have an infinite magazine. While it is theoretically true that lasers can fire as long as they have an energy source, the vehicle-mounted DM-SHORAD is clearly powered by a battery. There is no information on how many shots it can fire before the battery is depleted, but recharges will definitely be necessary, and likely sooner rather than later. Meanwhile, the Helios is reported to operate off the existing power grid of the ship it's mounted on, yet there's no additional information about how this works, what type of cooling system is employed, or whether Helios requires cooldown periods between pulses. The challenges surrounding laser technology should already be clear, but we haven't yet delved into the complexities of maintaining these systems or addressed how countermeasures might defend against attacks. When it comes to maintenance, lasers are significantly more complicated than traditional projectile weapons, and quickly swapping out parts is just not a viable option. Replacing a component requires a delicate, time-consuming process, and currently, the technology is often beyond the reach of your average military technician. While not having to establish ammunition supply chains presents a clear advantage, this is counterbalanced by the time, cost, and effort needed to keep a directed energy weapon operational. Progress is being made in this area, with the Rapid Capabilities and Critical Technologies Office announcing that it is developing standardized, easily replaceable parts. Additionally, there has been a concerted effort to enhance the resilience of the DM-SHORAD system, with the fact sheet stating that it has been ruggedized and could operate for over 4,000 hours before requiring maintenance. This indicates advancements in one aspect, but we still face the ongoing challenge of countermeasures. And to understand countermeasures, let's explore how focused beams of light interact with surfaces and how this relates to kill time. Cutting lasers are concentrated to create the smallest possible point of contact, typically about 5 millimeters on any surface. If you've ever used a magnifying glass to start a fire, you're likely familiar with these principles, as we discussed earlier regarding lenses. However, ultra-high-powered lasers like Helios do not currently utilize lenses, resulting in a spot point measured in inches rather than millimeters. Consequently, to heat a target sufficiently to ignite and destroy it, constant contact must be maintained for several seconds, potentially extending to 30 seconds or more, depending on the distance involved. There's also a layer of complexity involving different surfaces and their responses to various wavelengths. However, the key takeaway is that Helios is engaged in a critical effort to neutralize a target at a significant distance before it can close in and present a more immediate threat. The challenge is compounded if the target is coated with a countermeasure substance designed to extend kill time, effectively distracting the weapon and preventing it from engaging other targets. In some cases, the laser may even be unable to neutralize the target altogether, resulting in a billion-dollar weapon being rendered ineffective by a reflective surface. It's important to note that no single substance can effectively counter every laser operating at every wavelength. Finding the right countermeasure for a specific laser is much like playing a game of rock, paper, scissors. However, materials such as silver, diamonds, carbon fiber, and rare earth elements can at least partially resist a wide range of lasers, which is troubling for kill times. To further complicate matters, a target may employ evasive maneuvers that require the laser to be re-aimed, leading one to question whether lasers are indeed a viable military weapon at all. So, with that in mind, why are lasers making the headlines? Well, in November and December of last year, residents of New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Connecticut found themselves gazing up at swarms of unidentified, unmanned aerial vehicles, commonly known as UAVs or drones. Numerous explanations have circulated regarding these drones, but regardless of their origin, the phenomenon firmly embedded the concept of a potential enemy drone attack into public awareness. It's likely not a coincidence that in January, an image of the Helios laser weapon firing at a drone was released, followed by discussions about its capabilities. In December 2018, Gatwick Airport near London experienced widespread disruption as hundreds of flights were cancelled, leaving 140,000 passengers anxious and stranded. At that time, many speculated that a serious terrorist attack had been uncovered, or at least that a credible threat had been identified. It was later revealed that the chaos had begun when a security guard reported 2 unidentified drones within a 1-kilometer radius of the airport. Additional reports of drone sightings kept the airport paralyzed for days, ultimately prompting the Royal Air Force to request a drone dome defense system from Israel. Although order was finally restored and flights resumed, there remains ongoing debate about whether there was a malicious attack or if the entire incident had just resulted from mistaken identity and heightened paranoia. Regardless of the truth, though, Gatwick Airport invested £5 million in a defensive system to mitigate future UAV disruptions. The key takeaway from both the recent events in America and the incident at Gatwick Airport is that chaos was created solely by the presence of drones. Had these drones posed a genuine threat, it seems that local law enforcement and armed forces might have been rendered powerless, with UK authorities so ill-equipped that they had to seek solutions from abroad. What's especially concerning is that drones are not necessarily a new threat. They have been a significant concern for military since at least the 2000s. It is only now, as the threat becomes undeniable, that the public is becoming aware of the situation, and it has only been in recent years that questions are being raised about what measures are being taken to ensure safety. While it's true that lasers come with a long list of unresolved drawbacks that we previously discussed, they are unmatched in their ability to target and destroy small, fast-moving objects and are relatively cost-effective. Consequently, recent advancements in battery and energy generation technology have led to a frantic race by numerous nations and countless military organizations in recent decades to develop and refine this technology. Now we've concentrated on the most recent developments, but there is, in fact, a much longer progression of technological advancement that led to innovations like Helios and DM-SHORAD. In 2017, Lockheed Martin introduced Athena, which featured a 30-kilowatt Aladdin laser designed to target and destroy UAVs. Similarly, Raytheon was demonstrating their high-energy laser weapon system as early as 2019, well before the introduction of DM-SHORAD and prior to the availability of more powerful battery technology. We've also primarily focused on efforts in the US, but similar advancements in laser technology can be seen worldwide. Countries such as Turkey, Germany, and Israel are all developing their own laser-based anti-drone systems. Turkey is perhaps the most notable leader in the area, as it is reportedly the first nation to have deployed a directed energy weapon to down a drone in actual wartime conditions. Collaborating with the local company Roketsan, the Turkish military created the Alka anti-drone platform, which stands for its combination of lasers and electromagnetic disruption technology. Though the system specifications have not been made officially public, available information indicates that the Alka utilizes a 50-kilowatt laser effective at distances of up to 500 meters, while its electromagnetic disruption capabilities can neutralize drones at ranges of 1,000 meters. The system is said to automatically track targets moving at speeds of 150 kilometers an hour and can operate both from a stationary or mobile platform, functioning effectively in both day and night conditions. According to reports, Alka was successfully mounted on an armored vehicle when it brought down a Chinese Wing-Lun UAV in 2019. Germany has been collaborating with the prominent tech company Rheinmetall to refine high-energy laser systems since at least the early 2000s. Rheinmetall's laser platforms are noteworthy for their ability to target not only UAVs, but also reportedly capable of destroying helicopters, missiles, mines, and even in-flight artillery shells. In 2016, Israel showcased its Drone Dome, a compact, multi-layered anti-drone system that incorporates some of the most advanced radar technology available. While the precise details of the system remain undisclosed, it is known that the Royal Air Force has placed an order for one. There is also significant speculation that the system was employed at the G20 summit in Buenos Aires in 2018, as well as during the 2018 Summer Olympics. Returning to the Americas, though, it's worth noting that in September 2023, Raytheon delivered H-4 lasers to the recently reactivated 4th Battalion 60th Air Defense Artillery Regiment at Fort Sill. This occasion was truly significant. It not only signified the revival of a regiment that had been inactive since the Vietnam War, but it also marked the first time in history that US ground troops are officially operating directed energy weapons. Lieutenant Colonel Alex Corby, a former battalion commander, remarked, "The delivery of the DM-SHORAD prototypes represents an extraordinary advancement in our military capabilities. Today, Delta Battery etches its name in the annals of military history as the Army's first ever tactical directed energy-capable unit. With cutting-edge technology at their disposal, they are pioneers, forging a path towards a more formidable and agile future for our forces." End quote. Colonel Stephen Gutierrez of the Project Management Office remarked, "The delivery of DM-SHORAD prototypes to the 460th ADAR marks a transformational milestone in the Army's modernization campaign. This achievement brings what was once regarded as a next-generation capability into the present. The Directed Energy Project Office took emerging technologies and accelerated their maturation and development, delivering hardware to soldiers in record time." End quote. However, while the US celebrated its first directed energy weapon regiment, the so-called modernization campaign faces stark realities elsewhere. The US Air Force cancelled the Self-Protect High-Energy Laser Demonstrator program, which had been attempting to mount a laser on an aircraft. The project was terminated without ever producing even a prototype. Dr. Ted Ortiz of the Air Force Research Laboratory commented, "The SHIELD program has concluded, and there are currently no plans for further testing or evaluation." The Air Force has not yet installed a laser pod on a fighter jet testbed. However, through SHIELD and related initiatives, the Air Force Research Laboratory has made significant advancements in the readiness of airborne high-energy laser technology. "We continue to develop HAL weapons technology to the operational needs of today and tomorrow." As with all military technologies still in development, obtaining a clear understanding of the current state of this technology, its effectiveness, and its future prospects can be challenging. Militaries typically assert that their projects are at the forefront of innovation, claiming that taxpayer dollars are being invested in the latest and most advanced military breakthroughs. Nonetheless, it seems that armed forces worldwide are urgently striving to address widening gaps in their air defense systems. In many cases, the pursuit of directed energy weapons appears to be more about forcing a round peg into a square hole than a seamless integration of new technology. And look, there's no doubt that this technology will continue to advance. However, unless a major breakthrough comes, laser weapons are, in reality, not significantly more advanced or elegant than they were back in the 1980s. And look, we'll provide updates if anything changes. For now, though, a laser weapon serves as an effective counter to drones, provided that the weather conditions are favorable, the battery is fully charged, and the drone has not been outfitted with effective countermeasures. Thank you for watching.